Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on Entering the Philippine Market, a guide to PEZA, BOI, and CDC incentives. I am Orly May Vincolado, your moderator for this afternoon. Thank you for joining us. We sincerely appreciate your continued support and participation in our webinars. Your presence and engagement are instrumental to the success of our sessions, and we are grateful for your time and trust in us as a source of relevant and meaningful discussions. So we have an informative session ahead where we will explore the different business registration processes and tax incentives available for businesses looking to establish or expand operations in the Philippines. So before we begin, here are a few house rules to make our session productive and enjoyable. So first, kindly change your Zoom name to name plus company name by clicking the participants icon and hovering your cursor. Hand over your name and choosing rename. So this can help us confirm your attendance for today's webinar. Kindly change your Zoom name, please, everyone. All right. So thank you. And then second, be an active listener and feel free to take down notes. And then last would be use emojis and the chat feature to react, ask questions, or make comments. All questions will be answered during the Q&A portion. Okay, to start, let me introduce our company. We are InCorp Philippines, and it is one of the leading corporate solutions providers in Asia, dedicated to helping businesses establish and grow in the Philippines. So we offer a range of services, including incorporation, secretarial and compliance, product registration, bookkeeping and payroll, taxation, immigration, HR and recruitment, risk assurance, and corporate recovery. And also, we have a presence in multiple countries such as Singapore, Australia, Hong Kong, India, Indonesia, mainland China, Malaysia, Philippines, and Vietnam. So today we are honored to have three distinguished speakers who will guide us through this discussion. So to kick off our session, I would like to invite Attorney Esther Lauren Perez to present an overview of general business registration in the Philippines and introduce the optional tax incentives available. So Attorney Esther Lauren Perez is the Legal Compliance Director of InCorp Philippines. She helps clients with their legal compliance needs for business registration, product registration, corporate housekeeping, due diligence, and other related concerns. Her area of focus includes incorporation, corporate compliance, and business advisory. She took up BS Management at Ateneo de Manila University, graduate school, Masters of Business Administration at De La Salle University College of Business, and law at Far Eastern University Institute of Law. She is also an IBP member since 2020. Attorney Esther, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Orly May, for the introduction. All right, let me just open my camera. So for my presentation today, I will be giving a general overview of business registration in the Philippines and possible incentives through the investment promotion agencies, or what we call the IPAs in the Philippines, which include the Philippine Economic Zone Authority, the Board of Investments, or the BOI, and the Clark Development Corporation, or the CDC. Later on, my colleagues will give a more detailed explanation of the registration details of the PEZA, the BOI, and the CDC. For my part, it will be mostly an overview. All right. So I'd like to start with a quick question. I always like to ask this question. Why the Philippines? Well, why not? In 2024, the full year foreign direct investment net flows of the Philippines reached $8.9 billion according to the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, or the Central Bank of the Philippines. And the top 5 industries in the Philippines as of the full year of 2024 include manufacturing, real estate, information and communication, or the BPOs, construction, and financial as well as insurance services. So the Philippines definitely is a promising market. It is one of the fastest growing economies in Southeast Asia. And our gross domestic product for 2024 was at 5.6%. So GDP, or the gross domestic product, is the total value of goods and services produced within a country during a specific period. It is an indicator of the country's output as well as its economic health. So in recent years, the government has also been rolling out a string of policies or measures to open new sectors to foreign investments, streamline procedures, and improve transparency in the Philippines, which have led to a considerable improvement in the business environment of the Philippines, including the incentives for eligible activities under the IPAs, which we'll be discussing today. Some updates in terms of regulations and the business environment are summarized in my screen. So this includes the enactment of the amendment to the Retail Trade Liberalization Act of the Philippines. So one of the major growing industries in the Philippines is retail and wholesale. The paid-up capital for retail, particularly if it had foreign investors before, was very high. It was at $2.5 million. Now it's just about $500,000 or 25 million pesos. There were also amendments to the Foreign Investment Act, or the Foreign Investment Negative List of the Philippines. So in general, companies in the Philippines can be 100% foreign-owned unless the business activity falls under the Foreign Investment Negative List, or the FINL. There were also amendments done to the Public Services Act of the Philippines. So there are business activities that used to be classified as, public utility that could not have or required a certain percentage of foreign ownership. But now these activities can be 100% foreign owned, including railways, airports, and telecommunication companies. And then, as most of you may already know, last November 2024, the Create More Act was signed into law, particularly to update the corporate recovery and tax incentives for enterprises. So we call this the Create More Act. We can discuss some of the relevant updates relating to the IPAs vis-a-vis the Create More later on. In terms of digital transformation, so the government has really been pushing for digital transformation in our government agencies to have more transparency in the process, reduce red tape, and make the process faster. The Philippines has always had a very strategic geographic location. We are an entry point to the rest of Asia and Asia Pacific. In terms of workforce, we have a rising young population. The median age is at 25.5 years old. So these are some key data of the Philippines as a promising market. Okay. So in terms of general business registration, these are the types of business registration in the Philippines. So they are mainly categorized into 3. Sole proprietorship, which are self-employed individuals, basically. A partnership is essentially a contract between 2 or more persons who decide to contribute money, property, or industry, and then share the profits among themselves. Corporation is a separate legal entity, and there are different types of corporations in the Philippines, but we mainly classify these into 2, the domestic corporation and the foreign corporation. The main distinction is the incorporating law of the corporation. So if it's incorporated under Philippine law, it is considered as a domestic corporation. But if it follows the law or incorporated under the laws of a different country, then it's a foreign corporation. The usual types of legal entities which we register in the Philippines are the following. So the representative and the branch office are foreign corporations, and then the ordinary as well as the one-person corporation are types of domestic corporations. So this is a snippet of the key differences between the different types of entities. I believe we'll be sharing the slides later on, but feel free as well if you want to take a picture or snippet. So the representative and the branch office, since they are both foreign corporations in nature, they are essentially extensions of their head office. And the liabilities are considered as liabilities of the head office as well. The representative office is not allowed to earn income in the Philippines, and the activities under the representative office are restricted to the four activities mentioned here. For the domestic corporations or the ordinary corporation and the one-person corporation, of course, they are incorporated under Philippine laws. And in terms of liabilities, the liabilities are limited in a sense that, in general, it is only up to the shares put in by the shareholders of the corporation or the persons forming the entity, right? In terms of capital requirement for the representative office, there is a annual capitalization requirement of at least $30,000. It's not allowed to earn income in the Philippines, hence the annual capitalization of $30,000. And then for the branch, the ordinary, and the one-person corporation, it's pretty much the same. If the company has a foreign equity of more than 40%, particularly for the ordinary and the one-person corporation, the capital requirement is the equivalent of $200,000, unless the company is what we consider as an export enterprise or an enterprise wherein at least 60% of revenues or sales come from outside the Philippines, or if it is eligible for registration with the investment promotion agencies, including the PEZA, the BOI, and the CDC. And then in terms of the appointees, the mandatory appointees, for the representative office and the branch office, you will need a resident agent in the Philippines. The resident agent can be an individual or a company as long as he or she or it is a resident of the Philippines. For the ordinary corporation and the one-person corporation, you will need a corporate secretary who must be a resident and citizen of the Philippines, as well as a treasurer who is a resident of the Philippines. These are both officers and need not be part of the incorporators, directors, or shareholders of the corporation. For the ordinary corporation, you would need at least 2 incorporators to form it. For the one-person corporation, based on its name, you just need 1 person as the sole shareholder, director, and president. But you would still need at least 2 nominees, and just in case something happens to that 1 person, right? For the securities deposit, only the branch office will require securities deposit. Right. And then in terms of taxes, this is a snippet of the applicable taxes for the different types of legal entities. Corporate income tax in the Philippines in general is either 20 or 25%, depending on the level of revenue of the company as well as its total assets. For the branch office, it's 25%. Unless the company is registered with the investment promotion agencies, wherein it can avail of certain incentives in relation to the corporate income tax, either through income tax holiday or a special corporate income tax, as stated in my slide. For the representative office, since it's not allowed to earn income in the Philippines, there is no imposed corporate income tax. Value-added tax in the Philippines is at 12%, unless, of course, the company is eligible for registration with the investment promotion agencies, which allow for it to have 0% on its value-added tax. Note that in the Philippines, export sales, regardless of IPA registration, is also subjected to 0 rating. In terms of local taxes, all of these are also subjected to local taxes unless registered with the IPAs or the investment promotion agencies. And then final taxes for the branch office and the ordinary corporation. How do you register a company in the Philippines? In general, we have to register with 7 different government agencies, starting with the SEC, or the Securities and Exchange Commission. This is the government agency that regulates legal entities in the Philippines and issues the primary license, or the certificate saying that the company has been formed in the Philippines. And then afterwards, we should also register with the BIR, or the Bureau of Internal Revenue, or the tax authority in the Philippines. The local government unit, this is the city or the municipality where the company will have its business address. And then the last 4 agencies are labor welfare agencies. In the Philippines, the employers are required to remit contributions on behalf of its employees. So the corporation also has to register with these 4 labor welfare agencies if it will have employees. Next. All right, so this is a snippet or a snapshot of the different incentives under the PEZA, the BOI, and the CDC, which my colleagues will give more details on later on. So in terms of corporate income tax rate, all of these IPAs give the income tax holiday, either the income tax holiday, the special corporate income tax rate of 5%, or an enhanced deduction. Because of the Create More Act, one update here is that the company can already elect which type of benefit or incentive that it will get. It can elect for income tax holiday, the SCIT, in lieu of national and local taxes, or the enhanced deductions. Because prior to that, income tax holiday would be the first, and then followed by either the SCIT or the enhanced deductions. And then in terms of value-added tax, all the IPAs provide for 0% rating. There is an update with the Create More Act, which allows for the IPAs to determine what is directly attributable to its registered activity in the Philippines, allowing it to have 0% rating. So it is clarified in the Create More Act. In terms of tax and duty-free importation, generally exempt under all of these. Under the Create More Act, companies that have yet to receive their certificates of registration with the IPAs can already import and have the duty-free eligibilities as long as they post a bond or a bank guarantee. Local business taxes generally exempt under all the different IPAs. So the incentives that we mentioned a while ago in terms of income taxes. So the special corporate income tax rate of 5% is in lieu of all national taxes and local taxes. So that's very clear. Under the Create More Act, it was clarified that the local government units can still impose local taxes on IPA registered companies if they opted for the income tax holiday or the enhanced deductions, but there will be a cap on the local taxes that are imposed by the LGU, which should not be more than 2% of their gross income. Also, in terms of registrability, with the PEZA, they have a list of eligible activities, which are very specific. And the BOI, the CDC, it's more flexible, and we have to base it on the investment priorities plan, the current investment priorities plan of the government. In terms of working location, PEZA and CDC are generally on-site, but there are updates here in relation to the Create More, which allows for a more flexible or remote work percentage with the PEZA and the CDC. With the BOI, it's generally allowed to work remotely. Right. Yeah, I think that's it for my overview. Thank you so much for your time. If you have questions, please let me know or let us know after the presentation. I will give back the floor to our host, Orly. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Esther, for that comprehensive overview. Your expertise provides a strong foundation for our discussion today. All right, so let's move on to our next topic. I am pleased to introduce Attorney Mara Yamat, who will discuss the Philippine Economic Zone Authority, or PEZA, registration and the incentives that businesses can benefit from. So Attorney Mara Donna Yamat is a legal counsel and business consultant of InCorp Philippines. She helps clients with their legal compliance needs for business registration, product registration, corporate housekeeping, due diligence, and other related concerns. Her area of focus includes incorporation, corporate compliance, and business advisory. She took up PS Economics at the University of the Philippines and law at the same university, University of the Philippines. She's also an IBP member since 2022. Attorney Mara, please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Early, for the kind introduction. Hi, everyone. I will be discussing the Philippine Economic Zone Authority, its incentives, eligible activities, and the registration process. So, first, let's go through the outline for my presentation today. So first we'll discuss what is PEZA all about, the relevant laws, just in case you want to read further, the incentives, the specific PEZA locations, eligible activities in order for you to register for PEZA, and the process, and of course, how can InCorp help during your registration process. So first, let's look at the definition or what is the Philippine Economic Zone Authority. So the Philippine Economic Zone Authority basically promotes establishment of economic zones in the Philippines for foreign investments. And also the Philippine government agency tasked to extend assistance, register, grant incentives to, and facilitate the business operations of investors in export-oriented manufacturing and service facilities inside selected areas throughout the country proclaimed by the President of the Philippines as PEZA Special Economic Zones. So here are the relevant laws related to PEZA. So of course, we have Republic Act number 7916, which is considered, of course, which birthed the PEZA. And it was later amended by Republic Act number 8748. And it's also relevant to look at the implementing rules and regulations for both of these laws. And of course, recently we have the Create Law and the Create More Law, which amended the incentives granted by the PEZA. Okay, so here is an overview of the incentives of PEZA. So we have fiscal and non-fiscal incentives. For fiscal incentives, we have 4 to 7 years of income tax holidays, depending on the location and industry. We also have enhanced deductions after income tax holiday. So that's 10 years of enhanced deductions or a special incorporate income tax of 5%. We also have tax and duty-free importation for capital equipment, raw materials, spare parts, or accessories. We also have VAT exemption and importation and VAT zero rating. We also have a domestic sales allowance of up to 30% of total sales and an exemption from payment of local government taxes and fees during the duration of your availment of the 5% special corporate income tax incentive. For the non-fiscal incentives, we have special non-immigrant visa with multiple entry privileges for foreign investors and immediate family members, employment of foreign nationals, and of course, long-term land lease of up to 75 years. So I think the most we'll now discuss the income tax subsidy because I think it's what most businesses look at, or it's really one of the reasons why they register for PEZA or even BOI. So here is the table to determine what kind of or how many years of income tax holiday you will be given to. So you have 4 to 7 years depending on your location and also your business. So the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 depends on the strategic investment priority plan. So the current one is the 2022 SIPP, but I think they have a draft this year, or there is a new SIPP that will be coming out this year. When it comes to location, if you will be locating in NCR, of course, you will get the lowest number of income tax holidays. The next one would be the metropolitan areas or areas contiguous or adjacent to NCR. So you will be given around 5, 6, or 7 years, again, depending on your business. And of course, all other areas, you will be given the maximum amount of income tax holiday. So as you can see in the table, you have 4 to 7 years of income tax holiday and then 10 years of enhanced deductions or special corporate income tax. But because of the passage or the passing of the Create More Act, you now have an option to go straight to enhanced deductions or special corporate income tax. So instead of having 4 to 7 years plus 10 years of 4 to 7 years of income tax holidays and then 10 years of enhanced deductions or special corporate income tax, you can go straight to having 14 up to 17 years of enhanced deductions or special corporate income tax. Okay, so with PEZA locations, I think when someone hears PEZA, they automatically think about industrial parks or eco zone. So those big patches of land. So actually, PEZA locations are not just industrial parks or ecozones, but rather they can also be buildings. So for an example of that one is the Finance Center, which is an IT center located in BGC Taguig. So actually, PEZA has a list of all of their locations online. So we also, I mean, it's automatic that if you're going to register with PEZA, you must be located in a PEZA zone. So from the beginning, from registration with the SEC, you must already be located with a PEZA zone. So always make sure that your lessor or the place that you're going to be locating your business is PEZA located or PEZA registered. Okay, so for eligible activities, there is a total of 17 eligible activities with PEZA. So this ones will go through each one by one. So first we'll go with the export manufacturing. So export manufacturing, you have two options. You either do manufacturing or processing or assembly. For manufacturing or processing, this means that you will be converting raw materials or semi-finished raw materials into a new product through a change in their physical, mechanical, or electromagnetic characteristics and / or chemical properties. For assembly, this means that semi-finished parts or materials are put together or combined to form a distinct product without substantially changing its physical or mechanical characteristics or electromagnetic and / or chemical properties. Next is for information technology service export. This is very, usually when people hear about this, they usually think about, let's say, call centers. But for PEZA, they have listed a lot of enterprises or activities that can be considered or can be registered under this activity. So we have software development application, IT-enabled services. So this is where call centers, data encoding, transcribing, and processing comes in. We also have content development for multimedia or internet purposes, knowledge-based and computer-enabled support services, business process outsourcing, IT research and development, and other IT-related service activities. So our general rule, or what we usually tell our clients, is that as long as you are IT enabled or you are being supported by information technology, then you can be registered under this activity. Next is tourism. So tourism, one of the requirements that mainly or at least 70% of your primary clientele would be foreign tourists. So this would include sports and recreation centers, accommodations, conventions, and cultural facilities, and other activities, attraction activities, and establishments. Next would be medical tourism. So again, same with tourism, your primary clientele must be foreign patients as well. So this includes medical services, surgical services, obstetric and gynecologic services, pediatric perinatology and neonatology services, dental and orthodontic services, optometry, orthoptic, spa and health farms, drug addiction treatments, and rehabilitation services. Next would be agro-industrial export manufacturing, agro-industrial biofuel manufacturing. So this is different from manufacturing we have discussed earlier, since this involves specifically agro-industrial products. So this includes import substitution of commercial production and processing of agricultural crops for biofuel, processing or manufacturing for export of agricultural and marine products, integrated livestock, poultry, and related projects involving primary production, production of agricultural inputs such as feeds, veterinary drugs, and vaccines, projects involving the processing of agricultural waste materials into a commercially valuable product for export, and lastly, biotechnology products using agricultural products as inputs. Next is economic zone logistics services enterprise. So this one you have two options. So you either become a warehouse or you import or locally source raw materials for resale or for packing for subsequent sale to PEZA registered export manufacturing enterprises or for direct export. Next, we'll go through the economic zone development and operation. So basically, you can create your own economic zones, develop it, and then operate it. The basic requirement is that you must have the facilities, the infrastructure, and utilities for the specific industries. So for this one, this is manufacturing. So they don't really have a specific requirement as to the size or any minimum square meters or hectares, as long as you will be able to provide the necessary facilities for manufacturing enterprises. Next is for IT enterprises. For this one, based on their guidelines on the registration of IT enterprises and establishment and operation of IT parks or buildings, they have a minimum requirement for IT parks outside Metro Manila and also inside Metro Manila. So for IT parks outside Metro Manila, it must be a minimum of 5 hectares. But if it's going to be located in Metro Manila, it can be a building or an IT park, as long as it must have at least 5,000 square meters available business floor area. Next would be for tourism. This is for the tourism economic zone developments or operators. So again, same as the first one with the manufacturing enterprises, as long as you will be able to provide the facilities, or utilities for tourism enterprises, then you can establish one. They didn't really provide a minimum floor area or minimum area for establishing a tourism park. But for medical tourism park, they did provide. There is a need to have a minimum of 1 hectare if it's going to be a medical tourism park. However, if it's going to be a medical tourism building, then if it's within Metro Manila or Cebu City, it must have a minimum of 5,000 square meter floor area. And if it's outside Metro Manila or any other place aside from Cebu City, then it can be at least, or it must have at least 2,000 square meters. Next is for the economic zone development and operation of agro-based manufacturing facilities. So the only requirement that they have mentioned in the guidelines, specifically for agro-industrial economic zone developers or operators and locators, is that they must have a minimum of 5 hectares. Lastly, for economic zone development and operation are for the retirement economic zones. So aside from, of course, being able to provide the infrastructure facilities and utilities needed by retirement enterprises, you must also have a minimum of 4 hectares if you're going to establish an ecozone park. But for ecozone centers within Metro Manila and Cebu City, you must have a minimum of 5,000 square meters floor area. For other areas that are not Metro Manila or Cebu City, then you can have a minimum of 2,000 square meters floor area. Next, second to the last would be the retirement facilities. So this includes accommodations, hospice, retirement homes, health and wellness facilities, sports recreation centers and lifestyle facilities, cultural facilities, theme parks, utility services, and that the only requirement is that your primary clientele would be foreign patients as well. So that's the same with tourism and medical tourism. Lastly would be the utilities. So this is the establishment, operation, and maintenance of light and power systems, water supply, and distribution systems inside special economic zones. So now that we're done with the list of eligible activities, we'll now go through the basic documentary requirements that you must prepare or you must already have before you begin your registration with PEZA. So these are the basic documentary requirements. So of course, you need to have their application form, which you will be submitting through the EARS, a project feasibility study, anti-graft certificate, your SEC registration documents such as your COI, articles of incorporation, and your bylaws, a BIR certificate of registration, your projected financial statements, your notarized undertaking, and of course, a secretary certificate authorizing your company's registration with PEZA. So this is the process or the step-by-step on how you register with PEZA. And based on our experience, it usually takes total of 6 months or a minimum of 6 months from the preparation of your documents up to the signing of the registration agreement and issuance of PEZA certificate. So first, let's go through each stage one by one. So first we submit our application through EARS, and then once we submit that application, this will be presented or evaluated by the PEZA board. And then once they have evaluated it, we will receive the board approval, and also will be required to submit pre-registration requirements. So usually the pre-registration requirements compose of the following. So it's usually the registration, SEC registration documents, so the COI, AOI, and bylaws of the company, the acceptance letter or reservation for the economic zone location of the proposed project. They will also need, or they will also require you to submit a copy of your ECC. And lastly, of course, the payment of your registration fee. Once you have submitted all those pre-registration requirements, then the legal services group of PEZA will then evaluate and prepare the registration agreement between your company and PEZA. Once that's done, there's already the signing of the registration agreement and issuance of your PEZA certificate right after. So again, usually the entire process takes around 6 months minimum. And you might be wondering, where does InCorp come into this one? So actually, InCorp will be helping you even before your registration process. We'll be evaluating your business plans if you will be registrable with PEZA in any of their eligible activities. So we will make sure that you will not be denied an application, and also during your preparation of your documents, we will make sure that all of your documents will pass with PEZA, because we will base it on our correspondence with PEZA as well as our previous experiences with our other clients. So I think that's all for my presentation today. So I'll give the floor back to Orly. And if ever you have any more questions, you can just send it through our chat, or just let us know anytime. So yeah, thank you so much for listening, and I'll give the floor back to Orly. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Mara, for that thorough discussion. So your explanation of PEZA registration has certainly provided valuable clarity to our participants. So for our final presentation, we have Attorney Albert, who will walk us through the Board of Investments, or BOI, and Clark Development Corporation, or CDC Registration and Incentives. So Attorney Albert Jose Borja Bundalian is a legal counsel and business consultant of InCorp Philippines. He helps clients with their legal compliance needs for business registration, product registration, corporate housekeeping, due diligence, and other related concerns. His area of focus includes incorporation, corporate compliance, and business advisory. He took up business administration at the University of the Philippines, Diliman, and law at Ateneo de Manila University School of Law. He's also an IDP member since 2022. Attorney Albert, over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for your time today. Thank you very much for your kind introduction, Orly. So for this afternoon, I'll be discussing the registration and incentives being offered by Board of Investments and later on Clark Development Corporation. So we'll discuss first the aspects pertaining to Board of Investment. So this is the outline of discussion. First, we will start with what is BOI and why entities register with BOI, and what are the registrable activities with BOI, as well as some key reminders when it comes to BOI, especially when it comes to Create More Act. So, let's begin. BOI is an agency under the attached to the Department of Trade and Industry. At the heart of efforts to promote, facilitate investments here in the Philippines. One of the major investment promotions agencies with a mission to foster globally competitive industries and generate investments. The BOI plays a critical role in driving employment and economic growth, especially here in the Philippines. Now, to support this mission, the government issued Executive Order number 18, series of 2023. So the main idea of this executive order is to streamline the incentive programs under BOI, most importantly to those strategic investments that can be uh, put through green lane programs. So green lanes for strategic investment. So again, EO 18 or Executive Order 18 was implemented to streamline government processes for strategic investment projects. This is to address concerns regarding bureaucratic hurdles as well as to expedite approvals. So this aligns with all the initiatives made by the Philippine government to improve the ease of doing business here in the Philippines, like those of amending the Foreign Investment Act, introducing Retail Trade Liberalization Act, passing the CREATE Act, as well as amending the CREATE Act to introduce a more improved version of all the incentives known as Create More Act. So all of these initiatives aim to reduce barriers for businesses and to improve the ease of doing business here in the Philippines. So let's discuss um, the initiative when it comes to the Executive Order number 18. So again, it's passed last 2023. It covers all the agencies, but particularly for BOI, it aims to introduce a single point of entry or a streamlined approach when it comes to processing investment proposals for BOI incentives, particularly those deemed as strategic investments. So one of the key initiatives under that executive order is the creation of the One Stop Action Center for Strategic Investments. So, as mentioned in this slide, it serves as a single entry point of entry for all projects qualified as strategic investments. So, this ensures a simplified process as a single point of entry for business seeking permits and licenses. It aims to reduce the typical delays associated with multiple government agency transactions. So it addresses investors' concern and endorses the same to concerned government agencies, and also provides aftercare or post-investment assistance in order for investors to have a guiding hand when it comes to compliance for BOI requirements or incentive requirements. So again, there is an account officer with respect to green lane applications will be the coordinator when it comes to these applications. This aims to promote accountability, transparency, and again, provide a proactive approach when it comes to these types of applications. So also, it's a mandate under the Executive Order number 18, in line also with the Ease of Doing Business Act here in the Philippines, to cut down the transaction timeline when it comes to applications, particularly to all government agencies. So, in that regard, EO 18 highlighted that there needs to be strict compliance when it comes to timeline observation of timeline of applications and transactions. So they have this what they call 3-7-20 rule. It means 3 working days for simple transactions, 7 working days for complex transactions, and 20 working days for highly technical transactions. These are the mandated timelines that government agencies like BOI need to observe when it comes to processing the applications of all the individuals, assuming everything has been completely submitted to these government agencies. Importantly, EO 18 also requires the simultaneous processing of all the applications across agencies. Of course, it tries to ensure that these relevant documents are shared among the government agencies, allowing for concurrent evaluations and reducing the overall processing time. Again, this is in line with the initiative of the Philippine government to promote the ease of doing business here in the Philippines. Okay. Now, of course, furthermore, the Executive Order number 18 aims to promote streamlined approach. So, with the electronic submissions, some documents are allowed to be submitted electronically to fast track the transfer of information and for evaluation purposes. And at the same time, EO 18 wants to promote accountability and transparency when it comes to the applications with the Board of Investments. So, what will be considered the incentives? What will be the possible incentives for BOI applications? So, uh, much like with other investment promotions agencies, the incentives being conferred by BOI is governed by the prevailing Create More Act, the latest iteration of the Create Act, which promotes a streamlined approach when it comes to providing incentives for those business wanting to engage investments here in the Philippines, either as an export enterprise or a domestic market enterprise. But with the Create More Act, it promotes a more flexible approach when it comes to incentives because um, the selection of incentives can be tailor fit depending on the needs of the applicant with the Board of Investments, for example. So, as you can see in our screen right now, there are classifications whether the applicant is an export-oriented enterprise or as a domestic market enterprise. There are two options. So option one always pertains to availment of income tax holiday and subsequent availment of other incentives as may be deemed beneficial by the applicant. So first, let's go to the export enterprise. For an export-oriented enterprise, uh, they can opt to avail of income tax holiday, as discussed earlier by Attorney Mara. The duration of the income tax holiday depends on the location of the business, if it's within Metro Manila, adjacent to or contiguously connected to Metro Manila, or all other areas outside of a metropolitan area. Um, Apart from that, you need also to consider the tier industry where the business is classified. If it's tier one, tier two, tier three. So after availment of income tax holiday, uh, based on what will be selected initially by the applicant, they can opt to implement either a special corporate income tax or an enhanced deduction regime. So when we say special corporate income tax, it will be a fixed percentage of income tax on the gross income earned. So that's around 5% on the gross income earned. That will be the special corporate income tax. But for some businesses or some enterprise, they opt to choose enhanced deduction regime because based on their financial projections, it will be more beneficial at the end of the day for them to avail of enhanced deduction regime. So they can also avail of enhanced deduction regime after income tax holiday. Mind you, that for export enterprise, after income tax holiday under option one, it's either special corporate income tax or enhanced deduction regime. It cannot be both. Okay. So for other enterprises or for other businesses, maybe based on their business needs, it will be more beneficial for them to elect immediately the special corporate income tax or an enhanced deduction regime rather than undergoing an initial income tax holiday. That's why under Create More, it allows the applicant to select outright during the initial registration either a special corporate income tax or an enhanced deduction regime, as it may be more beneficial to the applicant based on its assessment as an export-oriented enterprise. But for domestic market enterprise, mind you that these are the business activities under the Strategic Investments Priority Plan, as also being crafted by Board of Investment. So assuming that business activity falls in those Investments Priorities Plan listed activities, um, as a domestic market enterprise, again, it has two options. Option one, again, it can have income tax holiday as an initial incentive, and then subsequently there will be enhanced deduction regime. It should be emphasized that for domestic market enterprises, they are only allowed to avail of enhanced deduction regimes after income tax holiday. Special corporate income tax cannot be availed by domestic market enterprise. For option two, if they don't want to, if the business applicant wants to jump directly to utilizing enhanced deduction regime, if it will be more beneficial to it, then it's also possible. Again, that's the flexibility introduced by Create More when it comes to selecting the most viable incentives for the business applicant with the BOI. So again, the BOI, being an investment promotions agency, has a has its power or discretion to grant incentives. But mind you that the Fiscal Incentives Review Board, as well as in the latest iteration of Create with the Create More Act, passed last November 2024, it emphasized and clarified the thresholds of investments where the investment promotion agency will be the primary approving body and when the fiscal incentives review board will be the primary approving body. So for investment for projects with investment capital at most of 15 billion Philippine pesos, that will be the investment promotions agency's call on how and if it will be granting the incentives granted by Create More to the applicant. So again, one of those investment promotions agencies is Board of Investments. But for projects with investment capital above 15 billion Philippine pesos, it will be the Fiscal Incentives Review Board's call with respect to granting the incentives. The role of the investment promotions agency will be the endorsing body to the Fiscal Incentives Review Board. So that's basically how investment promotions agencies interact also with other bodies like the Fiscal Incentives Review Board, which is the supervising government body when it comes to monitoring and supervising the granting of incentives to all investment promotions agencies. Okay, so what are the incentives under the Create More? So there are many incentives, both fiscal and non-fiscal incentives that is conferred by Create More and is being implemented by investment promotions agencies like Board of Investment. So one most noteworthy changes there is the if the applicant has availed of enhanced deduction regime, uh, the corporate income tax of the applicant availing of enhanced deduction regime will be that of 20%, as compared that previously before Create More, that for an enhanced deduction regime uh, part applicants, the corporate income tax back then was at 25%. So Create More lowered the corporate income tax rate for enhanced deduction regimes to 20%. And of course, there are also VAT zero rating, key advantage for companies focusing on international markets. Additionally, the Create More clarifies VAT exemption specifically for services directly related to export activities. And apart from that, of course, duty-free duty-free incentives when it comes to importation of capital equipment, spare parts, and supplies. So there will also be VAT exemptions for export enterprises. This includes clear process for VAT refunds and exemptions for importations related to international shipping and air transport. Apart from that, of course, exemption from payment of local business taxes for period of income tax holiday entitlement, especially for export enterprises availing of special corporate income tax, because the special corporate income tax is already at 5% on gross income earned. That is to be broke. That needs to be uh, apportioned between the national government and the local government unit. So 3% of that will go to the national government's coffers, while 2% of that will go to the local government's coffers. Okay, so apart from the fiscal incentives, non-fiscal incentives also entice individuals to avail of registering with investment promotions agencies like Board of Investment. So one of many is, of course, businesses may require employment of foreign nationals, and that requires work visas or alien employment permits. And Board of Investments aid and coordinate a faster, more streamlined approach when it comes to visa processing for those individuals requiring foreign nationals. And also with the recent Create More, we'd like to highlight this point that with all investment promotions agencies, especially for IT BPO enterprises, the Create More introduce a more flexible approach when it comes to work arrangements. It allows up to 50% of the workforce of the registrant to be in a work from home arrangement. So, unlike in a previous setup wherein some investment promotions agencies require full on site work within a prescribed territory or office space, at this point, with Create More, of course, subject also to the final implementing rules in the respective implementing investment promotion agencies. But Create More allows offering of more flexible work arrangements of up to 50% work from home arrangement with respect to the applicants. Now let's go to the registrable activities with the Board of Investment. So basically, the governing list of activities will be that of the Strategic Investments Priorities Plan. It's regularly updated every 3 years. So the last investment priority plan was released last June 2022. So we, for the purposes of our discussion today, we are still discussing the SIPP or the Strategic Investments Priority Plan released last June 2022. But please take note that sometime this June of 2025, there will be a new or updated list of strategic investments priorities plan to be released by the Board of Investment. So first, as I mentioned earlier, that's the so let's discuss the tier types. So there are three tiers when it comes to strategic investment priorities plan. So the first year includes all activities in the 2020 investment priorities plan. That investment priorities plan is reflective of what was happening back then, which is the emergence of the pandemic at the time, COVID-19. So it deals with job generation and mitigation of the effects of pandemic, both economic and labor effects of the pandemic. That's the primary focus of tier one. Tier two, on the other hand, focuses not just with the pandemic, but also with introducing more diverse industries in the Philippines that will bring value chain and value enterprises to the industries already in the Philippines. So focusing on future projects like green ecosystems, health-related activities, defense-related activities, industrial value chain gaps, food security related activities. And finally, tier three discusses research and development. So research and development businesses or activities that promote advancement in digital and information technology that will, of course, propel fourth industrial revolution, especially here in the Philippines, focusing on robotics, artificial intelligence, digital transformative technologies, among others. Apart from that, highly technical manufacturing production of innovative products and services that will require intellectual property commercialization. So, especially when it comes to aerospace, medical devices, water fabrication, advanced materials, among others. And finally, establishment of innovation support facilities. So, primarily, Tier 3 focuses on information technology and intellectual property generation in the Philippines. Okay, so let's just provide some examples for tier one. So those are some of the example activities considered to be tier one. So one of those activities most commonly in the Philippines is the information technology business process management. That's why there are many applicants with BOI belonging to information technology business process management or ITBPM. Most importantly, before Create More, Board of Investments allowed work from home arrangements, and as well as no requirement when it comes to being located in a particular economic zone. So the flexibility of BOI when it comes to location and telecommuting entices IT BPM companies to register under BOI regime when it comes to availing tax incentives or fiscal and non-fiscal incentives. Apart from IT BPM, you also have other industries like mass housing, infrastructure, logistics, especially now that the Philippine government is pushing public-private partnerships as a mode for improving and promoting, upgrading infrastructure, as well as other types of industries here in the Philippines that will bring inclusive growth and job creation here in the Philippines in the next couple of decades. So apart from that, renewable energies, environment and climate change related projects, innovation drivers, and healthcare disaster reduction management services. And also, among the tier one activities will be those export activities and all other activities covered by these relevant special laws. For tier two, as mentioned earlier, it promotes green ecosystems, businesses, health related activities, defense related activities, especially now that there are concerns when it comes to geopolitical situations around the globe, industrial value chain gaps, and most importantly, in relation to the geopolitical and the recent um, concerns about tariffs, food security related activities are also being pushed to be one of the main activities to be availed by investors wanting to avail of incentives here in the Philippines. So for TRT, as mentioned earlier, it goes with it, research development, more on improving the intellectual property and information technology drive here in the Philippines. And of course, the BOI offers their services based on the prevailing laws like that of the Omnibus Investment Code, and of course, to create more, which governs the list of incentives that BOI can guarantee and can confer to the investors here in the Philippines registering with BOI. Okay, so what will be the application processes with BOI? So actually, the BOI application process, in terms of the requirements, is as straightforward as it can be. So BOI initial consultation was with the preliminary step, checking the proposed business activity versus the vis-a-vis to the strategic investment priority plan of the Philippine government, if it will be one of those activities covered by among the tiers mentioned earlier. And if the BOI provides a positive feedback, then based on that feedback, there will be BOI registration proper. So there will be filing of application form along with the supporting documents, and of course, payment of the corresponding filing fee. Of course, there needs to be a preparation of evaluation report, as well as presentation of application form, evaluation form, and supporting documents to the BOI Management Committee. And the Management Committee will evaluate, along with the endorsement to the BOI Governing Board. So there will be a wait for confirmation and letter advice from the BOI Governing Board regarding board action, and there will be a submission of letter advice to applicant for board action. And then if there will be an approval, there will be a submission of letter of approval and compliance with the pre-registration requirements and payment of the registration fee before the applicant can secure a certificate of registration with the Board of Investments. So this is just the list of the some of the basic documentary requirements, but ultimately the documentary requirements will depend on the appreciation and the necessity of the during the evaluation process. So, based on our experience with the BOI, the Board of Investments are very proactive when it comes to the evaluation, and actually they're very collaborative when it comes to providing constructive feedback in order to guide the applicant to have a sound proposal so that their governing board can evaluate thoroughly with a complete set of information and give a clear decision on whether or not to grant incentives on the application made by the applicant. So everything begins with a cover letter, and then with an accomplished and signed and duly notarized uh, BOI application form. And then a key document is the financial projection with breakdown of cost of sales and manufacturing expenses for at least 20 years. I think this is where most applicants are being apprehensive. But take note, this is one of the key requirements because the reason behind this requirement is that the investment promotions agencies like the BOI will provide incentives to the applicant if ever the submission is in order, and uh, if the evaluation is positive. So the incentives simply means the government will let go of potential tax revenue in the hopes of the applicant generating enough economic activity, both in terms of job creation and investments in the country, to offset the tax revenue that will be forgone by the Philippine government. That is why the Philippine government, through its investment promotions agencies like the Board of Investments, are very keen on what will be the long-term um, uh, planning or long-term projects of the applicant in trying to avail of incentives here in the Philippines. So apart from the projections, there are also registration documents with the primary government agencies like the Securities and Exchange Commission. So an applicant needs to be registered first as a business enterprise. One of many is with the Securities and Exchange Commission. So the Securities and Exchange Commission will produce the certificate of incorporation, the articles of incorporation it approves, and the bylaws. So those are the key supporting documents that will comprise the registration documents. Other requirements or endorsements will be requested by the government evaluator on a case-to-case basis. So that is why the Board of Investments are really proactive when it comes to the evaluations. Okay, so let's now go to Clark Development Corporation. So Clark Development Corporation is another investment promotions agencies in the Philippines. That's one of the key drivers also of investment promotions here in the Philippines. Particularly, it focuses its processes in Clark Freeport Zone, just north of Metro Manila. It's The location used to be the former U.S. Air Force Base here in the Philippines. It's Clark Air Base, used to be one of the largest overseas military bases of the United States. Now it's being transformed by the government, by the Philippine government, ever since the turnover of the bases to the Philippine government, to be one of the major economic centers here in the Philippines. Actually, in some instance, the Philippine government is also positioning Clark as the premier economic destination in central and northern Luzon, and also as a backup district or a backup economic center in the Philippines if in case there will be a major event or disaster here in Metro Manila. Clark can function as an alternate economic center here in the Philippines. So Clark has a well-built infrastructure as well as interconnected road infrastructure and well-built air freight and utilities as well as telecommunication infrastructure. So it has all the hallmarks of a major metropolis, but it's still considered as an area outside Metro Manila. So that is why there are many investors wanting to locate in Clark Freeport Zone by registering with Clark Development Corporation, either as a regular taxpayer or those availing of incentives under the CREATE law, or now known as the Create More Act. So mainly they are drawn by both the availability of talent and the well-built infrastructure, and also the future infrastructure projects being built right now in Clark Freeport Zone, particularly the North-South Commuter Railway, the further improvement of the Clark International Airport, as well as the interconnectivity between Clark Freeport Zone and Subic metropolitan area to connect the seaports of deep seaports in Subic and the air freight cargo network in Clark Freeport Zone. So there are many investors already in Clark Freeport Zone, but um, with respect to the types of investors, there are regular taxpayers and there are those wanting to avail of tax incentives. So, as you can see, there are several different approach when it comes to taxpayers, when it comes to registrants in Clark Development Corporation. If it's just a regular taxpayer, meaning to say the locator or the investor in Clark Freeport Zone will not be availing of any fiscal or non-fiscal incentives. Those are some of the set requirements uh, being implemented by Clark Development Corporation. But for those wanting to avail of tax incentives under Create More, so they must still be covered, like with the Board of Investments, they must still be covered by the Strategic Investment Priorities Plan. Those activities that they want to establish in Clark Freeport Zone must be under the Strategic Investments Priorities Plan. And of course, they must prepare their forecast on their projections, as well as cost benefit analysis, which will be the projection of sales and projection of expenses that they plan to bring in to the business that they plan to establish in Clark Freeport Zone. And also, there's still this requirement to have at least 16 years presence in Clark Freeport Zone through Clark Development Corporation, because the main mandate of Clark Development Corporation is to promote local employment and economic development to Clark Freeport Zone. It used to be Clark Air Base. This is to replace the economic activity lost at the time when the Americans left Clark Air Base. So now, with more than 120 plus thousand employment being generated by Clark Freeport Zone, more employment is expected to be generated by this Freeport Zone. That is why one of many mandates by Clark Development Corporation to locators is they should have an undertaking to have a long-term presence in that Freeport Zone. Now, like in Board of Investments, everything's registration with Clark Development Corporation starts with the letter of intent, along with the enumerated supporting documents justifying the letter of intent, and of course, signifying the seriousness of the locator to avail of registration under Clark Development Corporation. So we have provided you the template from the Clark Development Corporation as to the form or application for registration. And this application for registration breaks down already a detailed list of all the documentary requirements that an applicant needs to submit, depending on its intention, whether to locate in Clark Freeport Zone as a regular taxpayer or to locate in Clark Freeport Zone as an entity wanting to avail of incentives under Create More. Okay, now Clark also identifies uh, there should also be an identifier as to the business entity planning to locate in Clark Freeport Zone. So if it's a corporation, if it's a sole proprietorship, or if it's a partnership, and also if it's in a direct lease arrangement or a subleasing arrangement. Because again, Clark Freeport Zone, just to give you an idea, is roughly around 4,400 hectares. That's apart from other areas of Clark being run by either Clark Development Corporation or by the Basis Conversion Development Authority. But for Clark Freeport Zone, it's a fenced area of 4,400 hectares. So there are some areas already developed by industrial developers who are subleasing these office spaces or warehouses to prospective locators wanting to locate in Freeport Zone. But there are those areas still under the direct management and supervision of Clark Development Corporation, and the direct leasing will be between the locator and Clark Development Corporation. That is why there are types of application with those types of classification. Okay, and the types of annexes or requirements will depend on whether the locator, again, is trying to avail of registration with Clark Development Corporation as a regular taxpayer, merely wanting to avail of its strategic location, well-built infrastructure, and the talent surrounding the Clark Freeport Zone, or those entities wanting to apply for tax incentives under the Create More program or Create More Act. So these are the requirements respectively. Okay. So for all types of entities, either a regular taxpayer or a fiscal incentives applicant, as a corporation, they need to provide the basic corporate information that they have already with the Securities and Exchange Commission. Okay. But it's important to note that all registration with investment promotions agencies need to be either a new enterprise or has not yet started its commercial operation, or even if it's already starting its commercial operation, registered already with the investment promotions agencies, it wants to expand its operation. So those are the two salient points that you need also to consider. Okay, if the enterprise or the entity is a sole proprietor, then in lieu of SEC documents, as a sole proprietor, that will be the documents will be coming from the Department of Trade and Industry. So there. Okay, and of course, as part of the know your client procedure or due diligence of the investment promotions agencies like Clark Development Corporation, there should be a disclosure of the source of funds as well as projected return on investment. And of course, the disclosure as to the kind of lease arrangement and the applicant in Clark Freeport Zone will be utilizing. This is also to track the compliance with the zoning ordinance or zoning rules and regulations in Clark Freeport Zone, in which Clark Development Corporation is the implementing body. So again, Clark Freeport Zone is a master planned zoned development area. So there are respective areas for respective types of businesses. And also, as one of the main mandate of Clark Development Corporation, as well as with other investment promotion agencies, is to ensure that the applicant for the investment promotions agencies will generate employment. That's the goal here for job creation and inclusive economic growth through job creation. That is why there needs to be manpower requirement disclosures and projections as to how many individuals will be employed and whether who will be employed as local and who will be what numbers will be employed as local and what numbers will be employed as foreign nationals. And also, of course, most importantly, apart from manpower, the capital, the investment or the project cost that will be committed in the project to be registered with Clark Development Corporation, much like also with other investment promotions agencies. And there are also several undertakings with respect to how the Philippine entity registering in Clark will operate in Clark Freeport Zone. And also the timetable of the project. How long will there be importation of machinery and equipment, installation of machinery and equipment, including also the hiring and training of personnel, and also the submission of site development or conceptual plans and construction plans, among all other details. So the nitty-gritty when it comes to establishing the actual presence in the Freeport Zone. And also the utility requirements. As mentioned earlier, Clark Freeport Zone is a master plan community with well-built infrastructure and utilities infrastructure. That goes with it, the monitoring of Clark Development Corporation and the service providers for utilities of the demand and versus the capacity that they have. So in that regard, they can forecast the projected demand within the Freeport Zone, both for electricity, water, internet, sewage, waste treatment, all that. There needs to be uh, uh, reliable information as to the actual market demand for those services. That is why they are requiring the disclosure of the utility requirements of the applicants in Clark Freeport Zone, regardless if they are availing of incentives or they are just locating there merely as regular taxpayers in Clark Freeport Zone. So again, another undertaking when it comes to uh, implementing protocols and procedures as a registered business enterprise within Freeport Zone, and also how the corporation will uh, will deal with the contingencies when it comes to possible human trafficking violations, online gambling or racketeering operations, among others. And of course, this is the business model as prescribed also by the Fiscal Incentives Review Board to provide it requires applicants wanting to avail of tax incentives the projection of cost of sales and expenses that they project in the long term to justify the cost benefit of foregoing tax revenues in exchange for job creation and cost of investments committed in that particular Freeport zone. So Clark Development Corporation undertakes that assuming everything is submitted dutifully and in complete set, that they will be able to produce results or feedbacks within 2 to 3 weeks from the submission of all those requirements mentioned earlier. And after the positive feedback, the Clark Development Corporation will issue the authority to operate. So, unlike in Board of Investments or with PEZA, where they have a certificate of registration, in Clark Development Corporation, they have the authority to operate. The authority to operate serves multifaceted functions. So, number one, it contains all the incentives if ever the applicant is um, tax incentive applicant when it comes to locating in Freeport Zone in Clark. So all the incentives as provided in this example are listed therein so that the authorities will be able to easily check what are the incentives granted by Clark Development Corporation as an investment promotions agency to the applicant. Another function of this authority to operate is this is the document in lieu of the mayor's permit. Unlike in other investment promotions agencies, wherein they will still require processing of mayor's permit to the respective local government unit where the office is located. In Clark Freeport Zone, the authority to operate granted by Clark Development Corporation is considered to be the mayor's permit also in their respective localities because Clark Development Corporation ultimately has the jurisdiction over the Freeport Zone, the fenced area in Clark, which is around 4,400 hectares. So uh, the Clark Development Corporation is akin to the permitting body when it comes to locators to operate in Freeport Zone, and also identifies the sublessors, endorsing the subleasing arrangements between the sublessor and the sublessee, and also take note that the authority to operate has the validity of at least 3 years, renewable for every 3 years. So that's the advantage of having authority to operate and really locating within Clark Freeport Zone. You not only you get the benefits of a well-built world-class infrastructure and interconnected land and air connectivity, but you also have the advantage of ease of doing business, I believe they also have what they call one-stop shop, business one-stop shop or BOSS program in coordination with Anti-Red Tape Authority. This is in compliance with the Ease of Doing Business Act, which aims to promote a streamlining of business processes in their evaluation and processing application in Clark Development Corporation. So there. On a final note, these are some of the key considerations if you're really keen on locating in Clark Freeport Zone. So it's an frankly, it's a tale of two cities between Metro Manila and Clark. In Metro Manila, it's already a matured, urbanized area, but in Clark Freeport Zone, you have the amenities of Metro Manila in Clark, but you still have room to expand and room to build, as there are no traffic congestions yet, no minimal pollution or negligible pollution, rather, as well as the ease of doing business, and with the interconnected road and air network, as well as the upcoming railway network, the ease of logistics and movement of raw materials and manpower will be improved. And of course, a great food scene, because Clark is located in the province of Pampanga. It's a common notion among Filipinos that Pampanga is a cultural center in the Philippines. So above average consumer confidence. So there are many retail and wholesale traders expanding their footprint in Clark as well as in region Central Luzon, particularly in the province of Pampanga, and disaster resilient geography. So as you know, Clark used to be an air base by the Americans, and the Americans built their U.S. Air Force base there due to its geographically strategic and geographic location, particularly with disaster resilience. And finally, the Freeport Zone still has its concept of work-life balance. So after work, individuals in Clark can enjoy the nature with various parks and other recreational activities within and around the surrounding Freeport Zone. So there. Thank you very much for your time today. That's all for my discussion with respect to Board of Investments and Clark Development Corporation. I'll be turning over the floor to Ma'am Orly for, I believe, question and answer portion.
So thank you, Attorney Albert, for that in-depth analysis. So your breakdown of BOI and CDC registration has been highly informative. We now move to our Q&A session. We have received some great advanced questions from our audience, and I will direct each questions to our speakers accordingly. Okay. So the first question is, does PEZA allows locators to mortgage the building for improvements and equipment to the bank?
Hi, I'll take that one since it's talking about PEZA. So actually there is no strict prohibition, or there is no prohibition regarding that one. But as usual, any kind of movements within PEZA must always be coordinated with PEZA. So if you're planning to mortgage your property or your equipment, it's best that you coordinate with PEZA and get their approval on this one first. Since again, all kinds of movements within PEZA or related to PEZA equipment or those registered under your PEZA, of course, will have to be approved and also allowed by the PEZA first.
Thank you, Attorney Mara, for answering question. If you have any additional question, you can just type it in our chat box and our speakers will answer them. Another additional question that we received, are the building and equipment part of the tax exemption? If yes, what is the corresponding proof of tax exemption?
Okay, so I think this relates to real property tax. Correct me if I'm wrong, but with regard to real property tax, they only specifically state, or the law specifically only talks about land. So it only applies to land. And when it comes to the exemption, you only have to show your certificate of registration with PEZA as well as your VAT zero rating certification.
Thank you, Attorney Mara, for the clarification. And then another advanced question. What are the changes on CDC incentives following Create More? Attorney Albert?
Yeah, so when it comes to the Create More, I believe the Create More introduced the concept of allowing the investment promotions agencies to grant the applicants or the locators in their respective jurisdictions of adopting hybrid or work from home arrangements up to 50% of the total workforce. So previously, with before Create More, Clark Development Corporation is strict when it comes to the arrangement of the work arrangement of those located in Clark Freeport Zone. Keep in mind that the mandate of Clark Development Corporation is to generate local employment in that particular region. So at that time, they are requiring that the locator uh, must have full on-site work arrangement, particularly when COVID pandemic already started easing. So now with Create More, it may allow Clark Development Corporation to issue a new regulation that will allow a hybrid work arrangement of at least, at most, 50% of the workforce uh, resorting to work from home arrangement. The reason of the legislators in providing this type of threshold is to strike a balance between sustainable office and warehouse commercial real estate demand versus uh, uh, the new trend of having a flexible work arrangement or work from home arrangement or telecommuting arrangement. So you can have a sustainable real estate industry, particularly commercial real estate industry, while at the same time uh, not being prohibitive when it comes to work arrangements. So probably, but we're still waiting from Clark Development Corporation the latest rules. But most probably they'll be able to craft new rules when it comes to work from home arrangements. I think that's one of the key changes that will be introduced with the passage of Create More.
Thank you, Attorney Albert, for answering our advanced question. So we have received four questions coming from our participants. The first one is, if a foreigner wants to incorporate a domestic corporation and also live in Manila or Philippines to manage the company, does he need a visa or residence permit first, or can he obtain a visa or residence permit after incorporating a domestic corporation?
Yeah, I think I can answer that one. So a foreigner need not obtain the visa or residence permit first. We can assist you with that, and you can register the domestic corporation prior to getting the visa. So there's no need to get the visa first, or residence permit prior to incorporation. We also have a lot of clients that are based abroad or are foreigners or here temporarily that ask or inquire about registering their companies in the Philippines.
Thank you so much to our participant who raised that question, and I hope that answers your question. For the next question from our participant, for a 100% foreign company with no local sales, which is better for registration, branch office or representative office?
Well, Actually, I think it depends on what the business activity of the company is. As I mentioned, for the representative office, it's not allowed to generate income from the Philippines. So in that sense, it may lean more towards that. But then again, for the representative office, there are limited activities that the company can do here. Like it can only operate as a communications center or an information dissemination unit, the promotion of the headquarters products, and quality control services. So if your activity falls under those, I think it's better to register a representative office. But if not, then other options are possibly more apt, like like the branch office, or maybe even like a ordinary or domestic corporation or subsidiary in the Philippines, which can also be 100% foreign owned, depending on the business activity.
Thank you, Attorney Esther, for answering the question. Let's move on to our next question. I lost the audio earlier. Can we repeat the answer on whether the building improvement built by the locator also included in tax exemption, or which document is this indicated again?
Hi, so as mentioned a while ago, I'm not sure if this is pertaining to real property tax, but when it comes to real property taxes, the law specifically states that it's only applicable to the land. Buildings or improvements are not included. When it comes to claiming the tax exemption, you just have to show your certificate of registration as well as your VAT zero rating certificate.
Thank you so much, Attorney Mara. So let's move on to our next question. Are purchases by a PEZA registered taxpayer from non-resident foreign supplier covered by VAT on digital services subject to 12% withholding VAT?
Okay, so the rule when it comes to VAT is that as long as it's directly attributable to your registered project or activity, then it is a zero rated.
Okay, thank you so much, Attorney Mara. So we have a new question coming from our attendee. Um, you have highlighted the benefits of the Clark Freeport Zone. How about the workforce?
Yeah, actually, I'm sorry. To answer that question, there are many locators availing of the talent in Clark Freeport Zone because of the workforce. The talent pool that you're looking at is not just in Clark Freeport Zone, but the surrounding provinces in north of northern Luzon or central Luzon, rather, as well. So they have backgrounds when it comes to accounting, engineering, and there are many professional individuals who can fill in the roles like you've mentioned here, skilled IT and mechanical engineering. So there are many cost centers or back offices operating in Clark Freeport Zone, primarily servicing to these kinds of business activities. So most are involved in bookkeeping, general bookkeeping, and tax compliance in some jurisdictions. There are also civil engineering, CAD, back office support services providers there, as well as other back office support and administrative support services. Also, there are also businesses or BPO companies that utilizes the talent in and around Clark as well as the surrounding areas of Angeles City as their main base of operations when it comes to computer and information technology or software as a service providers. So they are actually some of these entities, even located outside of Clark Freeport Zone, are registered in other types of investment promotions agencies like PEZA or BOI. So the region or the province of Pampanga is very rich in talent and very rich in various types of capable individuals who will be able to um, uh, cater to the business needs of those wanting to do business here in the Philippines.
Thank you so much, Attorney Albert. Are there any more questions or from our participants? Please feel free to type it in our Q&A thought box. One of our participants has raised his or her hand. May I know your question? Okay, I guess there's no more question from our participants. So thank you so much to our speakers for addressing those questions, and thank you to our participants for your engagement. As we conclude today's session, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to our distinguished speakers, Attorney Esther, Attorney Mara, and Attorney Albert, for sharing their expertise and comprehensive perspectives with us. I would also like to thank all of you for your time and participation. So we hope this webinar has provided you with meaningful knowledge into business registration in the Philippines and various tax incentives available. So if you have any further questions or would like to explore how InCorp Philippines can assist you with your business registration needs, please feel free to reach out to us. And also, we will be sending out feedback form after this webinar, and we need your cooperation to help us improve our future events. Once again, thank you for joining us today. My name is Orly Maven Colado, your host, and have a great day ahead. And we look forward to seeing you again in our future sessions.